Welcome. My name is Andrew Abela. I'm the Dean of the Busch School of Business at the Catholic University of America. It's my privilege to be the co-host of this conference on ethical management and faith in an era of woke capitalism. Why are we having this conference now? For decades, people have been calling on businesses to be more ethical. All of a sudden, it seems there's a mad rush by companies to be ethical, but with ethical defined as paying homage to whatever the politically correct idea of the moment is, and with zero tolerance, sometimes even outright hostility for any other view, particularly any religious view. This is called woke capitalism, and our conference will answer two important sets of questions about it. The first set of questions are around what is woke capitalism exactly? Where did it come from? Is it really a problem? And if so, how serious of a problem? The second set of questions are around what we as managers, investors, scholars, citizens, what we should be doing about woke capitalism. The conference will begin shortly with a panel that will help orient you to all of the speakers. Our panelists will be Tim Busch, who's president of the Napa Institute, David Bahnsen, who's the founder and managing partner of the Bahnsen Group, which is a wealth management firm, Father Robert Spitzer, president of the Magis Center, and John Meyer, who's executive director of the Napa Institute. And then we'll move, so this panel will kind of highlight some of the speakers, talk you through some of the themes of the conference. Then we'll move quickly to the very first speaker for our conference, who is Steve Green, CEO of Hobby Lobby, and he'll be talking about his company's uncompromising integration of faith and business. Then we'll move to defining the problem, so figuring out where did woke capitalism come from. And to tee up this segment, we'll have Jason Trennert, who's the founder of Strategus Securities. They're an institutional brokerage and advisory firm serving clients in more than 20 countries. He's the author of a delightful book titled My Side of the Street, subtitled Why Wolves, Flash Boys, Quants, and Masters of the Universe Don't Represent the Real Wall Street. He will speak from his 30 years of experience studying companies and macroeconomic conditions to give us a view from the front lines, as it were, about what is at risk here. He'll be followed by Professor James Otteson from Notre Dame, who will talk about the moral foundations of our market system and the role of cooperation and human dignity in these foundations. My Busch School colleague, Professor Catherine Pekaluk, will then talk about women and wokeness. And we'll continue to dive into the topic of wokeness itself with Professor Elizabeth Corey from Baylor University, who's going to speak about the origins of the idea and its connections with concepts such as intersectionality, microaggressions, bias, and so on, and what these all mean. Building on this, we'll have Professor Phil Munoz from Notre Dame, who will explain exactly what woke capitalism is. He'll show why it's a problem and how threatening it is, and he'll share a number of important examples. Then we'll have best-selling author and New York Times columnist Ross Douthat explore the cultural contradictions of woke capitalism. He's going to ask, is it a sincere replacement for the Protestant work ethic? Or is it a temporary but ultimately more destructive solution to the societal problem of consumerism without values, which is undermining family and community? Or is it just a cynical cost of doing business? And then to draw a close to our first segment of this conference, Sam Gregg, who is the research director at the Acton Institute, will explain how woke capitalism actually corrupts business. He'll show how it reflects a deep confusion about the purpose of business and how business serves the common good, and how this confusion diverts business from its proper purpose and undermines accountability, especially the accountability of executives and CEOs. And that'll be the end of today's presentations. We'll then round out the day this evening with Mass, live streamed from the beautiful new St. Michael's Chapel at the Busch School of Business. And we'll have a panel with Tim Busch, John Meyer, Father Roger Landry, and myself, and we'll be debriefing on today's talks. And then we'll have what I know will be a delightful concert of the Catholic University Student Ensemble. Tomorrow, we engage with the second and final set of questions around what should we do about woke capitalism. To lead us off, Steve Orth, who is the Chief Investment Officer of Federated Investors, and he's author of the marvelous book, The Missionary of Wall Street. He will talk about how he believes it's our duty as Christians to engage with woke capitalism, and he'll offer several principles for doing this and examples. After Steve, we'll have Monsignor Martin Schlag from the University of St. Thomas. Monsignor Schlag will draw lessons for dealing with woke capitalism from the Christian anthropology of St. John Paul II, whose 100th birthday we celebrate this year. Bill Muma is the chairman and CEO of the Beckett Fund, and he'll pick up the story by asking what happens when people pretend to believe things they don't really believe in just to avoid getting into trouble with woke capitalists. He'll draw from Professor Timur Kuran's book, Public Lies, Private Truths, and he'll explain how he thinks Christians ought to respond. Diving directly into the issues that are at the core of much of woke capitalism, we'll then hear from John Busch, who's senior counsel at the Alliance Defending Freedom, who has argued a dozen U.S. Supreme Court cases in the past decade, including the Obergefell versus Hodges case. And he'll talk about the legal implications of the gender and life issues for business and what degrees of freedom, if any, businesses still have in these areas. Roger Severino is the director of the Office for Civil Rights in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. He's going to talk about dialoguing with integrity in a time of division like this, and he'll be drawing directly from his own personal experience working at HHS. It can seem that large corporations are some of the worst offenders when it comes to woke capitalism. Brian Grimm is the president of the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, and he has a more positive opinion. He's going to talk about how many large corporations are becoming more faith-friendly, with companies like Google, Intel, and American Express having company-sponsored faith-based groups. Is that enough? Michael Norton directs the Center for Catholic Studies at the University of St. Thomas, and he's worried that the woke corporation is disordering and misallocating the good that business does. Woke management, he will argue, undermines the value of work by principally relating to employees not for their contributions, but for their politics in the workplace. This not only undermines good work, but also the possibility for friendship in the workplace. By failing to recognize the plurality and diversity of the workplace, management drives people's different political and religious views and philosophical views underground, which creates a false sense of unity in the corporation. My colleague, Professor Andreas Widmer, who directs the Sioka Center for Principled Entrepreneurship at our Busch School, will continue this line of argument to show how woke capitalism is a way to de-emphasize product, services, and client or customer service, where the cause becomes more important than any of these. Corporate charity in these days is a form of buying indulgences to make up for the supposed bad that corporations do in their daily work. He will conclude that we need to move away from the idea that business is amoral or even immoral, that has to be expiated through woke activism, back to the idea that business is inherently good when it serves society by creating goods that are truly good, services that truly serve, and employment. Our final talk will be by Father Philip Bochansky. Father Bochansky will talk about the spiritual battle is at the heart of everything that we've been talking about. You don't want to miss this one. He's going to offer some pointed guidance for what we need to be doing about that. This will be the end of our formal presentations. Our evening activities will be Mass live streamed from St. Patrick's Cathedral, and then we'll have 2 interviews to wrap up our whole conference. Professor Robbie George of Princeton will interview billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Singer, and I will interview Senator Marco Rubio, both on the range of ideas we have covered in this conference. It's a packed 2 days filled with great insight about a highly charged and important topic, and we are delighted to have you with us. Enjoy.